Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. On this last week of August, this Monday, I think it is now safe to say at this point that just 3 weeks after the FBI search of Donald Trump's Florida home, his defenders have run out of arguments. In the initial days after the search, Republicans, right-wing media rushed to fill the vacuum of knowledge we had about what had led the FBI to take this admittedly extraordinary action with just about every bogus excuse in the book.
They just don't give a flying flip about how politicized they look, which is terrifying.
Or the rule of law.
Of the federal
it's like
government.
a Gestapo.
Yeah, it feels that way.
You know, Trump's a memento guy. You've seen inside his office, there's a lot of clutter, memorabilia.
Do I know that the boxes of material they took from Mar-a-Lago, that they won't put things in those boxes to entrap him? How do we know that they're going to be honest with us about what's actually in the boxes? How do we know that was in the box before it left the residence?
What the FBI is probably doing is planning evidence, which is what they did during the Russia hoax. We also have a hunch they doctored evidence to get the warrant.
He had a standing order. There's the word I've been looking for. That documents removed from the Oval Office and taken to the residence were deemed to be declassified the moment he removed them.
Every single one of those claims the ex-president's supporters made to try to cast aspersions on the search has been shown to be wrong. They were all total nonsense. And over the last 3 weeks, every fact that has been revealed about the actual investigation of classified documents recovered at Mar-a-Lago has made the story more and more damning for Donald Trump. The chain of events, as we now know, shows the U.S. government, the Justice Department, the FBI, the National Archives, trying everything they can to avoid getting to the point where they would have to execute a search warrant. They asked for the documents back multiple times. They sent a top Department of Justice official to visit Mar-a-Lago in person. They negotiated with Trump's lawyers. They issued a subpoena. They did everything they could over the course, let's remember, of a year and a half to avoid where we are at now. But what are you going to do in the end? The ex-president refused to give all the documents back. They're not his. That's the plain truth. That's it. And so, as the New York Times noted last week, some of Trump's defenders have gone a little quiet. Quote, Republicans once outraged by Mar-a-Lago search have become quieter as details emerge. That photo is amazing, by the way. But others are doing what so often happens when people run out of arguments. They just resort to force, to menace, to the threat of violence. That's what we're hearing right now from Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina.
Most Republicans, including me, believes when it comes to Trump, there is no law. It's all about getting him. If they try to prosecute President Trump for mishandling classified information after Hillary Clinton set up a server in her basement, they literally will be riots in the street. I worry about our country.
Literally riots in the streets. Senator Graham threatening violence if the government brings charges against Donald Trump for possession of the documents we know he had and were not his. Now, we have seen this exact pattern before, eerily similar. It is exactly what happened in the lead up to January 6th. Donald Trump lost that election, and then immediately, even beforehand, he and his allies began by making completely false, bogus claims about how the election was rigged, lying about it all, right? Cycled through this litany of stories, trying anything that might work, that it was the voting machines infiltrated by the ghost of Hugo Chavez, or the absentee ballots, or the signature matching, or the election workers who were smuggling things in bags, or the Italian satellites. Each and every one of them rebutted. Each and every one of them wrong, failed. When one argument failed, they just went on to the next. Over and over and over and over again, until they were out of time and out of excuses, nothing left. And so what happened then? Well, then Donald Trump turned to his last remaining option, having failed to persuade, having failed in court, having failed to establish anything factually. He just went in the direction of menace and threats of violence. He told his supporters to come to Washington, rallying them, promising them it would be wild. He riled up what he knew, we now know, was an armed crowd, launched them towards the Capitol, explicitly directing them in that direction, where they proceeded to set off a deadly riot and almost successfully pulled off a violent coup.
Our country has had enough. We will not take it anymore, and that's what this is all about. Because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong. And we fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. So we're going to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. I love Pennsylvania Avenue. And we're going to the Capitol.
That is what it sounds like when Trump and his supporters run out of arguments. It's what we saw on January 6th. It's what it looks like. And I fear that is the path we are going towards again, with the rhetoric of people like Lindsey Graham going on national television and threatening a riot. And of course, it's not just Graham. Trump is doing his part as well. He knows what he's doing. He's goading this all on, just as he was in the lead up to January 6th. On January 6th, just days after the search at Mar-a-Lago, he began menacing Attorney General Merrick Garland. There's no other word for it. According to an account from his own team, revealed in a court filing last week, the ex-president sent a message through one of his lawyers, quote, President Trump wants the Attorney General to know that he has been hearing from people all over the country about the raid. If there was one word to describe their mood, it is angry. The heat is building up. The pressure's building up. Whatever I can do to take down the heat, to bring the pressure down, just let us know. Trump has also been relentlessly attacking federal law enforcement, writing on his fake Twitter about the, quote, atrocities being perpetrated by the FBI and DOJ having to do with the raid and break-in of my home, Mar-a-Lago. He referred to our law enforcement as that of a third world nation. Quote, they have no shame. They are destroying our country. He even shared an article that called the FBI the Fascist Bureau Investigation. Now, remember, in case you've forgotten, just a few days after the search at Mar-a-Lago, a man tried to shoot his way into the FBI office in Cincinnati. A few days after that, a Pennsylvania man was arrested after threatening to slaughter and kill FBI agents, writing in an online post, quote, you've declared war on us, and now it's open season on YOU. This is not a thought experiment. It's not a hypothetical. There is very clearly a real danger in all this threatening, menacing rhetoric. And we're now watching it play out in real time, as Trump and his allies, like Lindsey Graham, repeat the same kind of script that led up to the violent insurrection on January 6th, in which multiple people ended up dead. Thankfully, this time around, we should note, they're doing it with a much smaller platform. But it's also clear their attempts at intimidation have successfully entered into public debate across the political spectrum, even among establishment centrist pundits, about whether or not Donald Trump should be indicted. Lindsey Graham is not the only Trump ally who has argued that ex-president should essentially be above the law because his most extreme brainwashed followers will resort to violence if the law comes for him. But it just simply cannot be the case that the orderly administration of democratic rule and a nation of laws can be vetoed by a violent mob, as it almost was on January 6th. Yet that is precisely what the ex-president is trying to do again.